Alright, what's going on YouTube? I'm Tom Lincheri and this is Chocolate Avenue Baking Company. There are a few culinary experiences in my life that stand out as vividly as the first time I ever tried a truly chef-made artisan croissant. I must have been 19, 20 in culinary school, and we had gotten to the point of the text where it said laminated doughs. Now, I had never heard of laminated doughs and had no idea what they were, and I'm pretty sure none of my other classmates did either. But the day came when we got to that section, and the chef instructor that morning had made croissants for everyone to try as a demonstration, and he didn't have enough, so we cut them in half, and each of us got to try a half of this French croissant. And I will never forget biting into that first buttery, yeasty, incredible little piece of pastry heaven. And I've been making this recipe for many, many years. This or very close. And I call them French Farmhouse Croissants because, well, it uses a Preferment to get just that little bit of extra specialness to the final product. And we're going to go over to the test kitchen and give these bad boys a try. So, see you over there. It's first thing in the morning here at Chocolate Avenue Baking Company. First we make the coffee, then we do the things. Okay, so French Farmhouse Croissants. Now, if you need these for dinner tonight, I'm sorry to inform you, but that's not going to happen. You're much better off to make these to get the right results, the right flavor, the right texture. If you really want the real thing, the real French croissant experience, in my opinion, you're going to have to make a 2-day project out of this. And first, what we're going to do is we're going to make the Preferment. Now, this is to give these croissants more depth of flavor, and it's what I'm looking for here is 6 ounces of organic whole milk is what I'm using here. I'm going to get that just warmed up ever so slightly, and to that then we're going to add 6 ounces of organic all-purpose flour. Okay, so to get this Preferment going, tablespoon here of this yeast. Sprinkle it over the top of your warm milk. And we're just going to give that a stir with your wooden spoon. You can use your fingers for this. Kind of rather use my fingers in there. Yeast likes your hands in it. So then that's 6 ounces of the warm body temperature milk. Well, actually 80 to 90 degrees. And then we're just going to put 6 ounces, 1 tablespoon of yeast, dry active dry yeast, and then 6 ounces of the all-purpose flour. And then as soon as you have it mixed, we're just going to give this a cover with a dry towel, piece of plastic wrap, loose, and let that in a warm place for about 3-4 hours. And in the meantime, you can make your life a lot easier if you scale out all of your ingredients, as I've done here, using a digital scale. And as always, the recipe is down in the description box, so your best bet would be to go in there and write everything down. Now, I'm using weights mostly for this, just because it's much more accurate than trying to do it with cups and spoons. But if that's all you have, it's no big deal. I'm going to let those measurements down there in the description box as well. So the next thing that you can do to get ready while your pre-ferment is still rising is, what I have here is 23 ounces. So I took an ounce out for the dough. I have 23 ounces of unsalted Kerrygold butter, and put it into the mixing bowl and just kind of put that on medium for about 3-4 minutes until it's nice and smooth. And definitely use a high quality butter for the butter block. You can use cultured European butter, such as Plugra, is widely available here in the United States, and there's all kinds of other like regional specialty butters you can find. So you just scrape out the butter. It's got a nice smooth consistency now, and just simply place it in there. Pretty simple from here. You're just kind of spreading it out. You go, once you get everything nice and smooth and evened out inside the bag, just put it on a sheet tray. Our pre-ferment is ready to go. I'm going to show you how this dough pretty quickly can come together if you have everything ready to go. And it really is going to be a lot easier if you have a stand mixer to use for this. You can do it by hand if you really have no other choice, but so this is the pre-ferment, and at this point now it has a very nice, almost sour, sweet, tangy smell. And we're just going to scrape this into the bowl. In our 15 grams of yeast all at once there. So while it's starting to make up its mind, you can start drizzling in some of this milk, just a little bit at a time, and just start getting your flour in. At this point, I'm going to put about a tablespoon of the butter. You can go in with your granulated sugar and your salt. A little more milk. With the flour. So you do want this to come together smoothly, so I am adding just a little bit of extra milk, about a tablespoon at a time or so, just so it comes together. And you don't want to overdevelop this dough. We're not making bread here, so once it's smooth, you can just turn it off. And what we're going to do now is just allow this to rest for a while. Okay, so this dough has rested now about half an hour. It's a lot looser now than it was. So now what I'm going to do is just give this a final little low mix till it comes together into a ball. And then what I'm going to do is put a towel over this, a clean tea towel over this for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe 3 hours at the longest, and let it kind of relax and rise for a while. Okay, so it is nearly 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and our croissant dough has been through a lot today. it's in some serious need of some alone time. Chill out in the refrigerator overnight. So what I'm going to do here is just scrape this onto a sheet pan. You just want to give this at least 12 to 18 hours in the refrigerator. We're going to give this a good wrap here, plastic wrap, airtight. Just like that, it's the next morning, and I've given this dough a chance to rest and chill in the refrigerator for about 18 hours, and it has developed a nice supple consistency and a beautiful tangy kind of smell to it. It smells very promising. So I also took out the butter block, and what you really want to do here is you want to take this out about probably a half an hour. Take it out of the refrigerator about a half an hour before you're ready to start laminating the dough. Now we have to incorporate layers of this butter into this dough, and for that you're going to want to have approximately the same consistency. The butter should be about the same pliable consistency as the dough in order for this to work. So I like doing it the old-fashioned traditional way of 3 single turns. A lot of people like to use the double turn and then a single turn. I like to do the 3 full turns, letting the dough rest for a half an hour in the refrigerator in between each turn, and then I'll show you what that looks like. So my marble here is 28 inches this way. So that's what I roll it to. First thing you're going to want to do with this is just kind of like dust your marble, or a lot of people like to roll these out on wood. I like the marble because basically just because it's a little bit bigger than my wooden block here. So what I'm going to do is just take this dough that is kind of, it's still cold, it hasn't really come to room temperature or anything like that, but what I'm going to do is roll this lengthwise to the 28 inches. And basically what you're trying to do is just keep that nice rectangular shape. So now your butter by this point should be nice and soft and pliable. You definitely don't want this hard, or it's just going to shatter and crack inside. So all I'm going to do is just lay that right in the center. Just take a pizza cutter, pastry wheel, what have you, and cut right along the edge of where the butter is on both sides. Just cut just like that. So now you can just take off there's going to be some shaggy bits on the end. That's okay. You really are trying to, you can use that dough for different things. So you're basically just trying for a butter sandwich like that. So then I'm going to give this now the first single turn. So you're just going to take a little bit of bench flour and you're just going to roll this back out to the 28 inches by 11 inches or 12 inches or so. Finish rolling that back out. Okay, so once you have that back to its original shape, now you can bring it in like so. And there you go, there's your first turn. So what you want to do then with this, square it off and just put it on a sheet tray, wrap it back in the refrigerator for about half an hour to rest. I usually do between the turns. We'll repeat this process 2 more times. Keep your work surface lightly floured. We're going to give this another turn. And I've rolled this back out to the original 28 by 12 rectangle, and we're going to give this our second turn. Basically, all you're doing is just folding this like a business letter, a third, and then a third. Just kind of shape it into a perfect little rectangle there and put it back in the refrigerator for another half an hour, and we'll give it its final turn. Alright, so our dough has rested again for a half an hour in the refrigerator, and we're going to put a little bit of bench flour out onto the marble and give this one more turn. So after you've given this dough its third and final turn, you're going to want to give this a thorough chilling in the freezer for about an hour. It's been through a lot. This dough is hot and bothered right now, so you're going to want to give this a thorough chill. Don't freeze it if you're going to work it now, but give it a good hour just to really rest and get ready for the final roll and shaping. Alright, so just like that, our dough has been chilling in the freezer for 1 hour, and I pulled it out a minute ago just to kind of warm it up a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to roll this out to around 35 inches or so, about a 1/4 inch thick, before you actually shape the croissant. So I have this here on the stainless table, so we have more room to run, so to speak. It's a long process to get here, but I promise you it's worth all the trouble. These are absolutely incredible when they're done. So what we're going to do here is cut these down with a pizza wheel, and I'm going to bring you over here so you can kind of see how I'm cutting these and measuring this. With a sharp knife, just make a cut every 4 inches in the dough. Just make a sharp little cut right there, cut straight down, and do it on the other side as well, on both sides of the length. And now what you do is you're going to, from that 4-inch cut, you're going to just cut to the corner, and then the same thing here, cut back. Right? See how I'm doing that? But just trying to show you how I'm rolling these out with my fingers here. Just set it up on that tail so that it sits nice and high. So again, you just kind of slit in the side, the bottom of the triangle, base of the triangle as it were, whatever you want to call it. Using both hands to shape it like that. So then what we're going to do here is we're going to just arrange these on a sheet pan. Okay, so once you get a nice shape on your croissants, you just kind of want to give them a little room to grow. And to get the best flavor on these, I personally think you should just let this in a cool spot. Just give it time. I mean, it already took 2 days. What's a couple more hours? Just let it in a cool spot, because you don't want to go putting this in a hot, warm area where it's the butter could weep out of the dough. Just let it go until these about double in size. A lot is just gonna depend upon the temperature of your room that you're in, but definitely try to keep this under 75 degrees, the ambient temperature. So these have been setting here on the countertop for about 2 hours or so. And so now, as you can see, they've just about doubled in size. So these are just about ready to go in the oven. But what we're going to do here first is we're going to make a little egg wash here to go on top. So what I have here is just 3 organic egg yolks and a little bit of this heavy cream. Not going to use too much, just maybe a couple tablespoons in there, maybe a little more. And it's also important, don't forget, about maybe a teaspoon or so of a little more than around maybe half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of some fine sea salt. The salt's going to really help with the browning. So once you've applied your egg wash to the croissants, just make sure that your oven comes up thoroughly to 425. Make sure it's completely preheated, so when this goes in to the hot oven, it really springs. It'll spring up the steam. The butter layers inside will create steam and force the pastry to have a nice rise to it. So once the oven is at 425, we're going to put these in here, and I'm going into the middle. And now you're going to want to make sure that you keep an eye on these, and if you are using a straight oven and not convection, you can start the oven at 450. And just keep an eye on it, and you may have to rotate the pan a couple times. So after you've given these about 4 or 5, maybe up to 10 minutes of that initial burst of hot air, you're going to want to turn the heat down to about 400 and continue cooking. Okay, so these have been baking a total of about 20 minutes now or so since I turned the oven down to 400. And I know from experience that you really want to bake these thoroughly until they start looking like maybe they're getting a little too brown, and that's just so the center's set up properly. So I'm going to give this 1 more minute, and then we'll pull these out. So here they are, pulled out of the oven, and what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to transfer these over to a wire cooling screen here. And these do have to set up for at least 25-30 minutes before you try eating these, because the centers really need to set up properly. And if you just bite into one of these right now or cut into one of these right now, you're going to be really disappointed because the center is going to be not fully baked yet. They have to set. So we're going to let these set, and then finally we're going to come back and I'm going to bite into one of these things and you can see what they look like. Okay, so it has been an absolutely agonizing half an hour wait, and now we finally get to see what these things look like. So cut into this, and should see a nice airy inside and nice crispy burnished outside. So now I'm going to go ahead and give this a try and listen for the crunch. Oh man. Tender inside. Oh. You gotta try this with Kerrygold butter or a really nice strawberry jam. Amazing. And you know, croissants is one of those things you just got to try at least once in your life at home to experience what the real thing is like, or at least you can get close to, you know, like what you would experience in an actual French cafe or one of the nicer boulangeries or viennoiseries. Absolutely delicious. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.